government should not close churches, period. Honest bodies of believers practicing their faith ought not be strong-armed into closing, even temporarily, not for COVID-19 and not for any other reason. If a church decides it should close, it will voluntarily. If people desire to steer clear, they will of their own volition. The church, I can't speak to other religions, but the Christian church, in the Christian church, the body of Christ, according to the Bible, the church is the body of Christ, according to the Bible, sorry. And how that body is treated is, of course, no trivial matter. Put another way, a believer should never have to choose between breaking the law or breaking God's heart by not attending worship. We support the bill. Thank you.
Yes, Jacob Schrader with the Iowa Propane Gas Association. You might be a little confused what I'm doing here on this bill. And certainly most of the bill, we don't have thoughts on either way for that association. So I'm here to talk about propane supply. The propane is distributed within the state of Iowa through a mix of trucking and pipelines. And sometimes those pipelines go down, like what happened last November in Kansas. And when that happens, the governor of Iowa is allowed under federal law to ask for a disaster proclamation, which temporarily allows Iowa truckers to exceed their hour of service requirement for propane distribution. It doesn't happen all the time, but it happens pretty regularly. It happened this year when the governor declared a state of emergency on December 4th, and it happened again on January 15th. Under federal law, only the governor has the authority to declare that state of emergency. So just some questions that we're working through with the bill is if the General Assembly acted to extend a state of emergency, would the federal DOT recognize that extension, even though the federal regulation does say only the governor has that power? And then the other issue is question, I should say, is in section 2 on page 1, line 31, it says, following any rescission, extension, or amendment of this proclamation by the Legislative Council, only the General Assembly may take additional action. As I mentioned, it's not uncommon for this disaster proclamation to last longer than the 15 days that would be noted in the bill due to supply shortages, especially during the harvest season, if the supply shortage occurs during that period. So we would be a little worried about the General Assembly, if the General Assembly was recognized by the federal DOT, if it could be assembled regularly enough. And I don't know if you all would want to come here just to help with propane supply issues. So those are probably some things that you weren't expecting to hear today, but those are the kind of issues that our folks, when they read through the bill and anything page 2, line 10 and beyond, we don't have a position on. Thank you, and I'd be happy to stick around or provide any information about that issue. Thank you.
Megan Carlson with the Iowa Institute for Cooperatives. Again, this is not typically the place I play, but I echo Jacob's concerns. We have similar places where the importance of the governor being able to declare emergency powers in those instances is very important to us. I think what the intent of the bill is not necessarily my territory, but thank you.
Any other comments from anyone else? All right. Representative Wilborn, do you want to?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I do. Thanks, everybody, for being here, and in particular, that's.
All right.
Thank you, everybody, for being here and pointing out potential unintended consequences. But the fact that you are here highlights the fact that the reason for emergency proclamations by the executive is that there's some nimbleness to whether it's a public health emergency or a weather-related disaster. And so there are just times, even with the leadership committee being able to come together in the interim, that some issues, some problems about being able to be responsive, in addition to the questions related to jurisdiction and acknowledgement from the federal government. In terms of the I appreciate the faith and freedom perspective. I also am a member of a Christian church, the Anglican Episcopal Communion, and I know in my particular faith that have complied with no direct challenge and resulting in a request for this type of exclusion or limits on the executive, the governor's branch in emergency circumstances situations. What comes to mind for me is when I was mayor of Iowa City, my third month in, a tornado hit, destroyed quite a bit of the city. There was a church. They were in service. They all survived. In fact, part of the church remained intact, but there were issues with the construction that make sure that, it's too dangerous to go in with bricks and everything, although some folks may have, but there's a reason for that safety. And I believe that there's already, in terms of like with schools and education, there's some ability for individuals to exercise that right to not have, in this case, vaccinations. But I think there's also the issue of impact on the public at large, especially with communicable diseases. And I would just encourage you to maybe take a look at some other potential options for those emergency circumstances. An idea was floated to me earlier that, maybe that there is an exemption so that the governor still has the ability to do this, but if it's a place of faith, that within 72 hours, some type of judicial review to determine, is this a legitimate public emergency, health emergency? So I would ask you to consider that. I'm not going to support this at this time, again, because I think there's an importance to the nimbleness of the executive director, the executive official, the governor, to be able to help manage these in a safe way for the public at large.
Representative Stone?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And typically, I don't speak at subs. This is a time for the public to speak and for you guys to let us know, how you feel on the bill and the things that we have to work out. But I think that this bill warrants a discussion and some feedback on it. I will have to say that I do support this. Everything, the concerns that were brought up to me are logistical problems. Right? They're not philosophical, fundamental problems. And so I think we can work logistical problems out. Like, I think we can come to an agreement on days and getting other people involved. Do we extend the ability for the governor to 30 days or, all those are logistics. And so, we work in a government that, you hear from people and you make adjustments and then you put a bill forward, right? But I believe this bill is a great start. Obviously, it brings the conversation to the table, and I will support it. I also do support my colleagues and coming here and giving their feedback because we need to hear that. And so, but I will support this moving out today. So thank you.
Thank you, Representative Stone. And I will just make a few comments as well. I do appreciate you pointing out some logistical concerns, and we can certainly look through those. I think that this bill is put forth because we've learned a lot of lessons from a previous disaster called COVID. And so I think that when you listen to the people of Iowa, they want some closure and confidence going forward and how things are dealt with. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about what this bill does more specifically so everyone is kind of clear. We talk about religious liberty. So this bill does not, it prohibits the governor from issuing emergency measures that would interfere with religious institutions or individual practice. That's been brought up many times by the people of Iowa. It also does talk about disaster proclamation that lasts 15 days instead of 30, and the logistics around what that would be. And again, we can talk about if there is room for improvement. But again, what it does is make sure that there's more people making decisions. And then third, it doesn't allow the governor to, cannot order private businesses to close. It can't change, the governor cannot change procedures in elections without legislative approval, and it can't restrict licensed healthcare providers. So I think that's also important. Fourth, it also talks about the Department of Health and Human Services may only recommend rather than mandate tests, vaccines, or treatment. And so individuals retain the full decision-making authority in those instances. And then finally, it replaces the outdated recognized denomination in our religious exemptions, clarifying that those exemptions still hold in time of emergency. So I think that this bill really is about strengthening our constitutional liberties, and that's why it was brought forth, and we'll continue pushing this forward and having continued conversations. So I appreciate everyone coming today. Thank you very much.